Hello, this is your Unit 1 review for the test on Wednesday. So normally we will do these review sessions live, but since Monday is a holiday and our review sessions will be on the Monday before each test, I'm just making a video recording. And hopefully for the next test, you will come to review sessions. We play a game in Nearpod for the review in this class. Let me type in the code. So the other reason I wanted to record this is so you know what to expect if you come to a review session for the next test. Okay, the game is called Time to Climb, and usually I do about 10 practice questions on them. And each student chooses an avatar, and there are a lot of them. Penguin, I don't know, we don't have to go through all of them, but each student chooses an avatar and a fake name. And you're kind of like competing with the other students with your fake name on if you're getting each question right or wrong. And then between the questions, I will pause the video and explain the answers. So I'm going to be the penguin. I'm going to join the game. And here we see everybody playing. On the teacher end, I'm going to go ahead and start the game. So this question says, a researcher finds a positive correlation between a measure of community involvement and a measure of life satisfaction. How should we interpret the relationship between these variables? And the answer is the higher a person scores on involvement, the higher they tend to score on satisfaction. So I'm going to click the answer, and it was correct. Now my character is going to go up this mountain. And then it pauses. And so let me unpack that a little bit. So we have a positive correlation between community involvement and life satisfaction. That means the higher that you are on one, the higher that you are on the other. A negative correlation means the higher you are on one, the lower you are on the other. So there might be a negative correlation between self-esteem and depression. Like the higher your self-esteem, the lower your depression is. That would be a negative correlation. A positive is if one goes up, the other goes up. A negative is if one goes up, the other goes down. And then, of course, you could have no relationship. I think there is a question about correlations on the test, so just make sure you are aware of that. Okay, next question. The questions are also timed, but I try to make the time reasonable. I mean, this is not for a grade, even though you get extra credit. This says Maria believes exercise is important, but she only exercises a couple times a month. This is an example of situational attribution, behavioral confirmation, a self-fulfilling prophecy, or cognitive dissonance. And the answer is cognitive dissonance. If you get it wrong, it doesn't make you fall down the mountain. You just stay there. So let's see. Situational attribution is just attributing something to the power of the situation rather than internal characteristics. Behavioral confirmation, like we talked about a lot in class, is you acting like a stereotype that somebody thinks you are. Like if everybody's like, oh, Dr. Bell's really friendly, then I would feel like I just act friendly because that's what I think people expect of me. A self-fulfilling prophecy is very similar to behavioral confirmation. There's really not a huge difference there really at all. And then cognitive dissonance is when your beliefs don't match your behavior. And here you can see that she thinks exercise is important, but she only exercises a couple times a month. That sounds like me a little bit. But that is cognitive dissonance. And there might be two questions about cognitive dissonance on the test. There is at least one. You can also see it in as large of things as political context, all types of things, but make sure you know cognitive dissonance for the test. Okay. Alberto is a student who barely passed his physics exam, earning a D. He is comparing himself with a group of students who failed the exam. What is he engaging in? Self-perception, action identification, upward social comparison, or downward social comparison. And he is engaging in downward social comparison. So self-perception is just how you perceive themselves. That's too general, and he's perceiving himself in relation to other people. Action identification is a theory that we have not talked about in class, so it's really between upward social comparison and downward social comparison, and it's definitely on the test at least once. Upward social comparison is when you are feeling bad about yourself because you're looking up to people above you. So he got a D. If he was looking up to everybody who got an A and felt bad about that, that's upward social comparison. He's engaging in downward social comparison because he's looking down on people who did worse than him. So let's say you have your physical appearance. Upward social comparison would be like comparing yourself to models and feeling bad about yourself. And downward social comparison would be comparing yourself to people who you think are a lot less attractive than you and feeling good about yourself. So I always think of it, are you looking up at people better than you, or are you looking down at people worse than you? Okay, a person's knowledge of themselves, including traits, social roles, and social identity, is called the ego, the self-concept, the social identity, or the working self-concept. So this is just your self-concept. So your ego is kind of like a weird Freudian concept. It's kind of like weird to me. We may talk about that at some point in class, but that is not this. This is just your concept of yourself, so don't overthink it. A working self-concept is more transient. And this is more than your social identities. It says like it's your traits, your social rules, and your social identity. So it's obviously not just your social identity. That is your self-concept. So I wouldn't overthink it. If a measurement is extreme the first time it is taken, and then the following measurements are not extreme, we are observing an illusory correlation, misattribution, regression to the mean, or spontaneous inference. We are observing regression to the mean here. So regression to the mean, that's like if one day you weigh like 6 pounds more than normal, and then just like the rest of the days you kind of just weigh a lot closer to your normal weight, it like regressed to the mean. It just is like when something is like extreme, a lot of times it just kind of bounces back to normal. So an illusory correlation is when you think two things are related and they are not. Misattribution is just thinking the cause of something is not what it really is. And spontaneous inference is something that we have not yet covered, but I'm pretty sure regression to the mean is definitely on the test. And it's just when you have something that's like out of the norm, then you usually see things back to normal. Or like if on a test, one test you failed it, but you were always like getting good grades, maybe the next one you'd go back to normal. So that's regression to the mean. It forces it to pause kind of a long time between when I tell it to go on. Salem is studying aggression and television viewing in children. One group of children watches aggressive cartoons and the other watches non-aggressive cartoons. The children then go to a playroom to play with a variety of toys as Salem counts the number of aggressive acts. acts. In this example, the dependent variable is the number of aggressive acts, the kids who watch the aggressive cartoons, the kids who watch the non-aggressive cartoons, or the type of cartoons that they're watching. See, the dependent variable is the number of aggressive acts. So independent variable and dependent variable is definitely on the test, maybe more than once. So the independent variable is the condition that you're assigned, and what you do depends on the condition. So the dependent variable is the one that depends on the condition you were assigned. So here, the independent variable, what they were assigned is watch the aggressive cartoons or watch the non-aggressive cartoons. And then how aggressive they acted depended on that. An example, let's think about like another example. Let's say I used to do a lot of brain stimulation research. Let's say you get the real brain stimulation or the fake brain stimulation, and then we give you like an IQ test. The independent variable would be if I gave you the real or fake brain stimulation, and then the IQ test would be the dependent variable. So we're saying like maybe how you do on the IQ test depends on if you got the real or fake brain stimulation, which were the independent variable. It was always kind of, I don't know why that concept used to be hard for me to grasp when I was a student. So if it's hard for you to grasp, that's okay. A team of social psychologists want to study the effect of death anxiety on self-esteem. The researcher randomly assigns people to read about either death or a local news story before asking them to indicate their level of self-esteem. In this study, reading about death is the what and self-esteem is the what. So independent variable, dependent variable, dependent variable, independent variable, abstract conceptual variable, operational definition or operational definition, abstract conceptual variable. I'm not going to have enough time to answer. Well, what I was going to say is, oh, it still let me do it. IV and DB. So, so they're choosing, are they going to read about death or are they going to read about what did have them say? They're going to read about death or they're going to read about no local news. So that's an independent variable. That's a condition. And then their level of self-esteem, they think is going to depend on if they read about death or if they read about the local news. So that's independent variable and dependent variable. Those other filler ones in there, those were just kind of other options. An operational definition is how exactly you define something in an experiment. Like in the one about those kids, they defined aggression as how many aggressive acts they did, and they probably had like a really specific list of what they consider an aggressive act to be. So that's an operational definition. I don't think is covered on this test, but just make sure you know the IV and the DB. Okay. Weighting judgments towards recent information is the representativeness heuristic, the availability heuristic, counterfactual thinking, or belief perseverance. This is the availability heuristic. So the availability heuristic, I always think about it as what's available in my mind. If I heard something recently, it's just available in the front of my mind. I guess this is my mind. The representative heuristic is like a stereotype. That would be like if you saw somebody in a suit, maybe you think they have like a fancy job, or like if you heard somebody was a secretary, you might think they were talking about a woman or something like that. That's a representative heuristic. But yeah, availability is what's available in your mind, your recent information. Counterfactual thinking is like thinking about what could have been, like what if I majored in something else, how would my life be different? And belief perseverance is keeping the same belief despite getting a lot of information that like should change your mind. Okay. And we have one more question today. Okay, Shane is an atheist. When volunteering at a local food bank, he is talking to a group of Christians. How does research suggest Shane will think of himself in this situation? As a volunteer, as a Christian, as an atheist, or it is impossible to say? I think this is a tough question. So he is thinking of him, he has these two identities. He has volunteer and he has atheist, and he's with this group of people who have these two identities, Christian and volunteer. And so he is going to see his identity as the one that matches the other group. So he's just thinking like we're all volunteers. Like he's not really reflecting on like we have different religions, if that makes sense. So he's matching to the social group there, and that's what people would normally do. So that is how these review sessions will work. So I don't remember exactly what time, but we'll have 3 different times of day on Monday before each test to come to the optional review session. And if you come, you will get 3 extra credit points on your test. At the end of this game, it will show the winners. In this case, I won, but it's because I was the only player. If you have any questions about the test, please do let me know. It is on Wednesday at 10:20. And I posted an announcement with more detailed information. But good luck, and let me know if you have any questions in the meantime.